What is going on, guys? Richie from 04 Mach 1 Speed. Hope you guys had a great holiday. And as you can imagine, of course, I asked for flashlights this year for Christmas. Now, every year I ask for a flashlight, but I never get one. But this year must have been different, because I got one from my parents, and I got one from my girlfriend. So this one is the Jetbeam WL-S4, a flashlight that's putting out 2,600 lumens on just two 18650s. And the funny thing is it actually gets an output decrease of 2,200 lumens on four CR123s. So, obviously, your best bet is to go with two 18650s. But this thing has a peak beam intensity of 36,000 CD, or almost 40,000 CD. And actually, it seems like a lot, but it really isn't that much considering the fact that the reflector is about, or the head is about 61 millimeters wide. It's a pretty big, large head. It's a pretty large head, but you're not going to get much throw out of this thing simply for the fact that it has the MTG2, an LED that's literally 4 times the size of the XML. Now, of course, it's got the orange peel reflector, so it should smooth out any imperfections in the beam, or any imperfections that the flashlight may have. AR-coated lens. Now, this strike bezel, to tell you the truth, I'm not too sure if it's actually removable or not. I'll have to check that later and see if it is, but really the only thing you're going to want to put on this flashlight are color filters, because the diffuser would be kind of pointless, considering the fact that it has such a wide angle on it. So the cool thing about this flashlight is it's relatively affordable, considering the fact that the package doesn't really come with anything. No holster, no clip, obviously no clip for a flashlight that big. No lanyard, pretty much nothing. I think the only thing it comes with is some spare O-rings. That's pretty much all you need. I find myself having many packages of empty boxes for flashlights that all of the lanyards and all of the holsters are pretty much still in there because I don't use the holsters. Of course, always Jetbeam does a fantastic job on their machining. In this, I don't really know if this is considered a budget light or not, considering it's only about $100, $110. So I guess it could still be considered a high output budget light, since 2,600 lumens for about $110 is a pretty good price. Now, I got this for Christmas, but I pretty much know how much they go for and how much they cost. Machining is fantastic. Hard anodized Type 3 aerospace aluminum, of course. And what we have here is the back button is a forward tactical switch, as of most flashlights these days. Nobody really has reverse switch flashlights because they are boring and nobody likes them. Now, I don't have this flashlight, not this one, but you guys remember the old Jetbeam M1X. This reminds me a lot like the Jetbeam M1X. I never had an M1X, but I'm assuming by a lot of the pictures that I've seen online, they took some pretty close designs of the M1X flashlight. Not to be mistaken of the M2S. The M2S is quite different than the M1X and this, because there's heat sinks pretty much all around the actual head, whereas the M1X and the WL-S4 don't. They just have these little tiny heat sinks here that really don't serve much purpose at all. But since the head is so big, not going to get a whole lot of heat. And the funny thing to note is, I'm sure some of you may have already known this, but believe it or not, this giant LED that's 4 times the size of an XML is actually a lot more efficient than the XML. Of course, here's a size comparison between two LEDs, between both LEDs. That is the XML2, Generation 2, the XML2, and then this is the MTG2. It's kind of hard to tell since I'm trying to keep them. Here, I'll just kind of pick both of them up. So like I said, it's literally 4 times the size of the XML. And somehow it's much more efficient and actually generates less heat. So of course the flashlight is powered by two 18650s or 4 CR123s. You're definitely going to want to use 18650s. They generally last a lot longer. And you actually, on this flashlight, surprisingly, get a much higher output on two 18650s. Alright, so here's the back of the tail cap. The tail cap pretty much looks standard, just like every other tail cap. They all pretty much look the same. I know I'm going to get this question, so I might as well answer it. The switch does feel very solid. It feels like a very tight switch, so definitely good switch. Threads are not square cut threads, so it will be a little easier to cross thread them, so just be careful. But they are not square cut threads. Now I'm using cheap batteries. Trustfire is not super cheap, but they are a cheaper brand, so I'm eventually going to get a couple of Nightcore or a couple of Jetbeam batteries. Higher quality than Trustfire. I've had these batteries forever, and somehow they still hold a charge, and they somehow charge very well. I would normally recommend that you use nothing but high quality batteries in a flashlight like this because of the output, but the MTG2 emitter is actually a very efficient LED, so it's not really going to matter too much. Just don't use some super cheap Chinese batteries, but Trustfire, if you've got a bunch of Trustfires laying around, they'll do just fine. And pretty much the only flashlight you're going to want to definitely use high quality batteries in is something like the Nightcore TM26 or the TM06, something with multiple emitters that put out 3, 4, 5,000 lumens. You definitely want to use high quality 18650s for that. Here's the back of the head, where all the circuit boards, the drivers, all that good stuff is. Nothing but high quality stuff from Jetbeam, even on their cheaper flashlights. Now, I've taken this flashlight outside a couple of times. I just got it a couple days ago. And even for having a very large LED, this thing actually does put out some pretty good distance. It's definitely not going to do something like a single XML flashlight would in a head like this, but you actually do still get pretty solid throw out of this thing, believe it or not. So you get a very wide angle, super bright thrower flashlight. Now, of course, one thing to remember, it doesn't say it anywhere on the package at all. I don't even think it says it on the website, but this flashlight is definitely a neutral tint flashlight. It's one of the first neutral tint flashlights I've got. I've got nothing but cool white flashlights, and when I see a big difference like that, a big difference on Kelvin rating, I can definitely tell this is a neutral tint flashlight. It's somewhere in the 4,000 to 5,000 Kelvin, maybe right at about 5,000, but I'm used to 6,000, 6,500 flashlights like that have more of a bluish, cool white tint, but this is more on the yellower side, more on the neutral side, so it is a neutral tint flashlight, just to let you guys know. And I think most MTG2 flashlights actually are. There are very few that are cool white, but this one is definitely neutral tint. Alright, so just to let you guys know, the flashlight is governed by PWM. It does have PWM on the lower outputs, especially on the lowest output, but it's actually very, it's hardly noticeable at all, so I'm guessing it's a high frequency PWM. Alright, so the interface, of course, you have momentary activation. It does have mode memory, so it will remember the last mode you used. And once the flashlight is on, this is basically a battery indicator. You got two lights on there. When they're both lit, it's 50% or higher. And if just one of the lights is on, if one of the blue lights is illuminated, then you got about 50%. If they start flashing erratically, then you're lower than 50%. So now the sequence is high to low. I would have rather it been low to high, but that is the highest. It does have 5 levels of output. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it goes from high to low. So high all the way down to the lowest setting. It does have mode memory, and of course the interface is unbelievably simple. You just tap the button is all you do, and to hold it down, it goes into strobe. You hold it down, and hold it down again, it goes into SOS, and then it goes back into the mode that you had it last. So it does have mode memory. That is the one. So there it is, the Jetbeam WL-S4.